To create the illusion of having parchment paper or vellum, first you'll want to create a new layer and use your marquee tool to drag out the area where you want the image to reside. And you'll fill that. Go ahead and fill it with white for now. And deselect, Command D. Then I'll grab my effects and click on Pattern Overlay. Then I'll need to change the pattern. So to change the pattern, you can click on this drop down. Now, I already have several patterns here. You probably wouldn't have that many. So we'll load patterns. And to do that, you just click on that arrow, and here are all the patterns that are available to you. So we can actually use a texture fill, and there's also artist surfaces. There's several patterns to choose from. We'll go ahead and choose artist surfaces, and I will replace those so we can see what we're looking at. And as I click through each one, I'm given a sample, but I can also see the changes up here. Of course, we definitely want to go down with the opacity, and there are other options that we have for that as well. So first I'll figure out which one I'd like to use. I'll go ahead and use sort of a rougher grain just to make sure you can see what I'm doing. I'll bring that opacity back up and click OK. Now, actually there are other things I needed to do, so I'll go back to Pattern Overlay, and under Scale I have the option to bring that up, which of course we wouldn't want to do, but I can also bring that scale down. So depending on what pattern you chose, you may or may not want to do that. I'm going to actually leave it at 100% for now. And take the opacity down just a bit. I'll go ahead and click OK. No, I won't. I'm going to put a drop shadow in there. And I'll bring the distance out just a bit. And now I'll click OK. Then I'll grab my lasso tool, and I'll just come in and make some quick selections here. We do not want to make it even. You might want to leave some even spots, but we're wanting to make this look like torn paper. So any imperfections, for instance right there, I didn't really mean to go in that far. Any of those are going to look like torn paper when we're finished. And I won't do the end because it's supposed to look like it's coming in from the side. And now I'll grab my Smudge Tool and I'll zoom in just a bit. And we want to make sure that finger painting is off. It probably will be on yours, but with mine I was doing some things with that earlier. And the strength will take up to 100% for now and see how that works for us. So I'm going to come in and just start scrubbing here, or scribbling, if you want to call it that. And it's not going to look like much yet, but since this is a process, I'm going to go ahead and keep with it, and then we'll look at if there's something else that needs to be done. Now, when you're scrubbing with a smudge tool, you need to scrub from the top down because, and see how it eats into the image. If you scrub from the image up, it drags that image up like that. So we don't want that. We want it to come in. And then some places, if it goes up, that's okay. because it will still add to that torn look, but we just don't want it to be too much. All right, so I'm going to leave that and just work with that to show you the rest of it. Now I want to zoom out and let's see how it looks. It is starting to look like torn paper. And now I'm not really sure about this pattern anymore. I'm definitely not sure about the color. So let me choose a different color that looks maybe a little bit more like what I'm looking for. Sort of a, there we go. And I'll just grab my paint bucket again. Whoops, accidentally pressed F. And I'll just grab my paint bucket again and click, and it changed the color for me, and I can go back into my effects just by double clicking here and see if there's another pattern I like better. And I'm specifically looking at the edges here now as I'm choosing my pattern to make sure I choose one that will show up more like a torn edge than the other one did. And I have opacity down. Let me go ahead and take that back up so I can have a better look. I think I'm going to go with, hard to choose. I'll go with this one for now. Let's see what it looks like with the opacity down. Yeah, I'm liking that. Okay. Now the opacity for this is only affecting the actual pattern. It does not affect the layer. So I shouldn't be able to see through this to the other layer. We'll do that over here in our layers panel. So I'll click OK. Maybe I'll scale down a little bit. Yeah, just a little. And click OK. And now I can bring the opacity down a bit, make it look as if we're seeing through it. There we go. And I think I'll take the drop shadow and take the angle down like that so you can see better how that's working out. There we go. And I would just continue on around to complete the look. Now in the example I showed you, I also had some brads here, and I'll just show you very quickly how I did that. I'll make a new layer, grab my elliptical marquee. I'll make it a little bit larger and then scale it down. I'm going to hold down Shift, drag out a circle, and then fill it with gray. Deselect that. And then I will actually need to find the center of that. And if you have your guidelines set up to snap, then you'll be able to do that more easily. I just dragged my guideline down and I felt it sort of snap at the center of that, so that's very helpful. Then I'll go into my effects and go to bevel and emboss, and you can see it's already starting to change. I can choose a little to add a little depth and size and soften, and see if we want to change that to possibly another type of emboss, not stroke, maybe pillow emboss. There we go. So you just want to play around with those settings until you come up with something you like. I'll click OK. And now I need to create the center part of that, and I'll just take out a circle. So what I'll do is when I drag my circle, instead of trying to drag it out and then make sure it's going to be in the center when I drag it, I'll start in the center and drag out. And to be able to do this, you'll need to hold down some keys. And the keys are the Shift, because that will keep it in perspective and make it a true circle, and Alt or Option, depending what machine you're on. So I'll hold both those down. I'll click and drag from the center and get my circle. And now I can just hit delete. And there I have a brad. So I'll resize that. Actually, before I resize it, now let's say I want to keep this brad and make it available for some of my other images. So what I'll need to do is select it and copy. Go to File, New, and it will give me the file size that I just copied. So whenever you copy something and you want to paste it into a new file, you just want to use this clipboard preset. So I'll click OK and paste, and it did not keep the actual effects for me, so I'll go back to that, and I'll need to right click and copy layer style, and right click and paste layer style. And now I can save this as a brad and maybe put it in a folder where I keep all of the items that I've created and want to use at another time. So I'm not going to save that. Instead, I'm going to come back over here and reduce the size of that and take it over to the edge.